She suspects nothing. When a CFO discovered her cousin and husband's betrayal, she struck back. What would you do if you discovered that the two people you trusted most in the world were conspiring to destroy you? This is the story of Sarah Mitchell, a brilliant financial controller who uncovered a betrayal so deep it threatened to take everything: her money, her freedom, even her daughter. But Sarah didn't just survive. She fought back with the only weapons she had: her intelligence, her courage, and her refusal to be broken. This is a story about betrayal, resilience, and the quiet strength it takes to rise from the ashes when everything you believed in turns to dust. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, or if you simply believe in the power of justice over revenge, this story is for you. Before we begin, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful real-life inspired stories about courage, healing, and finding strength in the darkest moments. Ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now let's dive into Sarah's journey from heartbreak to triumph. I woke up in a room I didn't recognize. My hands were tied behind my back. My head throbbed with a pain so intense I could barely think. The lights above me flickered, on off, casting shadows that danced across unfamiliar walls. And then I heard it, the sound that made my blood run cold. "Mommy, mommy, please, Lily," my 9-year-old daughter, screaming from somewhere beyond the locked door. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The room spun. I tasted copper in my mouth. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Portland skyline. Pearl District, 12th floor. The door opened. Victoria walked in holding a glass of wine, looking as elegant as she always did, as if this were just another casual evening. "You're awake," she said, her voice calm, almost pleasant. "Good." My voice came out hoarse. "Where is my daughter?" Victoria took a sip of wine. "Safe, for now. 3 weeks ago, I had everything. A corner office with a view, a salary that let me sleep well at night, a daughter who still believed I could fix anything, a husband I thought I knew. 3 weeks ago, I found a text message that shattered that illusion. And now I was tied up in a penthouse fighting for my life and my daughter's safety. Let me tell you how I got here. 3 weeks earlier, the rain started just after 6. I stood at my office window on the 15th floor of the MedTech Solutions building, watching water streak down the glass in uneven lines. Portland in September always felt like this, caught between summer's last warmth and autumn's creeping cold. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 37 years old. I'm the chief financial officer of a mid-sized medical technology company downtown. I've been married for 12 years to a man who used to make me feel like I could conquer the world. We have a 9-year-old daughter named Lily, who still believes in magic and thinks her mother can do no wrong. From the outside, my life looked like something worth envying. From the inside, it felt like a house with good bones but drafty windows, solid enough to stand but never quite warm enough to call home. I didn't realize how cold I'd become until the night I found the message. I left work early that Thursday, unusual for me. It was Lily's 9th birthday, and I'd promised to be home by 7 to help her finish decorating the cake we'd started that morning. James had promised he'd be home early too. That should have been my first clue. James rarely came home before 9 anymore. When I walked through the door of our house in the West Hills, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table working on her homework. She looked up, her face brightening. "Mom, you're early." "I promised, didn't I?" I set down my briefcase and kissed the top of her head. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. "Where's Dad?" "He called, said he'd be late. Big meeting with an important client." Something tightened in my chest, but I pushed it aside. This was normal now. This was just how things were. "Well, then it's just us girls for dinner. What do you say we order pizza and finish that cake?" Lily's face lit up. "Can we get extra cheese? Extra cheese and pepperoni." "Deal." We spent the next hour like that, mother and daughter decorating a chocolate cake with pink frosting, laughing at our terrible decorating skills, pretending that everything was fine. Because it was fine. It had to be fine. At 9:30, after Lily was in bed, I sat in the kitchen with a glass of wine waiting for James to come home. That's when I saw it. His iPad lying on the kitchen counter where he'd left it that morning lit up with a notification. I wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's devices. I'd never been jealous or suspicious. Trust was something I'd always given freely, perhaps too freely. But something made me look. The message appeared on the lock screen in white letters against the dark background. Room 408 ready. She suspects nothing. Can't wait to feel you again. The sender's name was just a letter V. I knew immediately who it was. Victoria Chen. Not my best friend from college. I'd never had time for close friendships. Victoria was something more complicated. She was my cousin. Or so I'd been told my entire life. 5 years ago, when Victoria's family in Taiwan faced financial difficulties, I'd sponsored her immigration to America. I'd helped her find a job, helped her get settled, welcomed her into my life and home. Victoria, who now worked as a marketing consultant for various firms in Portland, who came to our house for dinner at least twice a month, who'd held Lily as a baby and whispered, "You're so lucky to have such a strong mother." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I felt nothing at first, just a strange emptiness, like someone had reached into my chest and scooped out everything that used to live there. Then the numbness cracked, and underneath it was something sharp and cold. I set the iPad back exactly where James had left it. I dried my hands carefully, folded the dish towel. Upstairs, I could hear the faint sound of Lily's white noise machine humming through her closed door. I walked to the living room and sat down on the couch in the dark. Outside, the rain continued its relentless rhythm. Inside, I counted my breaths. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Something my therapist had taught me years ago after my mother died when I was 16. A way to stay grounded when the world tilted sideways. The world was tilting now, but I had a strange thought as I sat there in the darkness. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Part of me had known something was wrong for months, maybe years. I'd just been too busy, too focused on being perfect to acknowledge it. James came home at 10:45. I heard his key in the lock, his footsteps in the hallway. "Sarah," his voice carried from the entryway. "Living room," I called back, keeping my voice steady. He appeared in the doorway, his dark hair damp from the rain, his tie loosened. There was weariness in his eyes that had become permanent somewhere around year 8 of our marriage. "Sorry I'm late. The client meeting ran long." I nodded, studying his face in the dim light, looking for signs I'd missed. "How did it go?" "Good. Really good, actually. Big contract." He set his briefcase down. "Is Lily asleep?" "She waited up until 9, then I sent her to bed." Damn, I really wanted to be here for her birthday. "There's cake in the kitchen if you want some." "I ate with the clients." He pulled off his jacket. "I'm exhausted. Think I'll just head up to bed." I watched him, this man I'd shared 12 years of my life with, and tried to remember when we'd stopped really seeing each other. "James," I said, my voice calm, "do you ever think about us, about what we've become?" He paused halfway to the stairs. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear that I was about to ask questions he wasn't ready to answer. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Never mind. I'm just tired, too." He nodded, relieved to be let off the hook. "Get some rest. We can talk about whatever it is tomorrow." But we wouldn't talk tomorrow, because I already knew what I needed to know, and I had no intention of confronting him. Not yet. Not until I understood exactly what I was dealing with. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside my husband in the bed we'd shared for 12 years, listening to him breathe, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. Every few hours, his phone would light up on the nightstand, and I'd see the glow reflected in the mirror across the room. I wondered how many messages I hadn't seen, how many times they'd texted while I was in the next room, while I was making dinner, while I was reading to our daughter. But I didn't reach for his phone. I didn't confront him. I just lay there, feeling something inside me shift and harden into something that wouldn't break so easily again. When dawn finally came, gray and reluctant, I got up carefully so as not to wake James. I went downstairs, made coffee, started Lily's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes. By the time they both came downstairs, I had my mask firmly in place. The competent wife, the caring mother, the woman who suspected nothing. "Morning, birthday girl?" I said, kissing Lily's forehead as she stumbled into the kitchen, still half asleep. "Morning, Mom." James appeared behind her, already dressed for work. He kissed my cheek, a reflex, nothing more. "Smells good. It's Lily's special breakfast. Sit, both of you." We ate together, this little family of 3, and I watched them and felt like I was looking at strangers. Or maybe I was the stranger and I'd just never noticed before. After they left, Lily to school James to his office, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and began to do what I did best. I started investigating. My career as a CFO had taught me many things, but the most valuable skill was this: how to find patterns in numbers, how to spot inconsistencies, how to follow a paper trail until it led to the truth. A marriage, I realized, was just another kind of accounting, and I had a feeling the books weren't going to balance. I started with our bank accounts. We had 3: a joint checking account for household expenses, a joint savings account, and separate retirement accounts. I had access to all of them. James had been transparent about that from the beginning. One of the things I'd loved about him. No financial secrets. Or so I'd thought. I pulled up 6 months of statements and began reviewing them line by line. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Mortgage payment, utilities, groceries, Lily's school tuition, insurance, the normal expenses of a comfortable middle-class life. But then I started noticing a pattern. Every other Thursday there was a charge to a hotel, the Azure Pearl, a boutique hotel in downtown Portland known for discretion, the kind of place where rooms had separate entrances and the front desk didn't ask questions. The charges were always coded as business expenses on James's company credit card, but I cross-referenced them with his work calendar, the one he shared with me, so I'd know when he'd be late. Every single time there was a charge at the Azure Pearl, James's calendar showed late meeting or client dinner or working late at office. Never specific, never detailed, just vague enough to be believable. I opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting everything. Date, time, amount, calendar entry, location. By the end of the first hour, I had a clear pattern. Every other Thursday, like clockwork, for the past 6 months, 26 weeks, 13 hotel visits, 13 lies. But that wasn't all. I noticed something else. Starting 3 months ago, there were regular transfers from our joint savings account to an account I didn't recognize. $5,000. Every month. $15,000 total. Gone. I traced the account number through our bank's records. It belonged to a business, Victoria Chen & Associates, LLC. I sat back in my chair, staring at my laptop screen. James wasn't just having an affair with Victoria. He was giving her our money, our savings, the money we'd planned to use for Lily's college fund, for our retirement, for emergencies. He was transferring it bit by bit to Victoria's business. The cold anger I'd felt the night before solidified into something harder, something unbreakable. I saved the spreadsheet as Project Phoenix. Phoenix, rising from ashes. That's what I'd be when this was over. Over the next week, I continued my investigation with the methodical precision I brought to every financial audit. I installed a family locator app on James's phone, the same app we'd used when Lily was younger, and we worried about keeping track of each other. He'd forgotten it was even on his device. I reactivated my access and set notifications to silent. Now I could see exactly where he was at any given moment, and he'd never know I was watching. Thursday arrived, the day of James's usual late meeting. I tracked him all day through the app. Office, lunch meeting at a restaurant downtown. Back to the office. Normal. Then at 6:30 p.m., the blue dot that represented my husband moved from his office building to the Azure Pearl Hotel. It stayed there for 3 hours. I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap, watching that blue dot remain perfectly still. Lily was upstairs doing homework, singing to herself, as she often did. My husband was 3 miles away in a hotel room with my cousin, and I sat there perfectly calm and took a screenshot. Added it to my spreadsheet. Evidence. That's all this was. Just evidence. When James came home at 10:30, I was watching television with the sound low. "Hey," he said softly, loosening his tie. "You're still up." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "How was work?" "Exhausting. The Riverside project is behind schedule. Had to stay late to review the numbers." "That's tough," I said. He kissed my forehead. "I'm going to grab a quick shower and head to bed." "Okay." I listened to him climb the stairs, listened to the water start running. Then I looked at my phone and opened the folder I'd created, labeled Project Phoenix. Inside were screenshots, bank statements, calendar entries, hotel receipts I'd requested from our credit card company. Every lie, every betrayal, Every stolen moment. All documented. All time-stamped. All irrefutable. I was building a case the way I'd build a case against financial fraud at work, and soon I'd have everything I needed. The following Saturday, James took Lily to her soccer game. It was one of the few parenting duties he still consistently performed. He'd been a soccer player in college, and he loved coaching from the sidelines. I told them I had a headache and needed to rest. Instead, the moment they left, I went to James's home office. His laptop was there, closed, but not password protected if you knew where to look. And I knew where to look. James was predictable in some ways. His password was Lily 2015, the year our daughter was born. I opened the computer and began searching. Most of what I found was work-related. Project files, client correspondence, invoices, budget spreadsheets, nothing unusual. But then I found a folder labeled Property Research. Inside were emails between James and Victoria. Dozens of them. Going back not 6 months, but 14 months. 14 months. Over a year. I'd been wrong about the timeline. This had been going on much longer than I'd thought. I started reading my hands steady on the keyboard despite the way my heart was racing. The early emails were innocuous. Professional discussions about potential real estate investments, market analyses, neighborhood comparisons. But around month 4, the tone shifted. Thanks for the dinner last night. I needed that conversation. Sarah and I barely talk anymore. Anytime. You know I'm here for you. Sometimes I feel like I married someone who doesn't really need me. She's so capable, so independent. Where does that leave me? My jaw tightened. I kept scrolling. The emails became more frequent, more personal. I can't stop thinking about what you said yesterday. Me neither. We should probably talk about this in person. And then from 8 months ago, last night was a mistake. Was it? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore except that when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. I read that line 3 times, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. I thought about all the times I'd tried to support James, all the times I'd told him he didn't have to be strong all the time, that he could lean on me, all the times I'd tried to be his partner, his safe place. And apparently I'd failed. Or maybe he'd never wanted safety from me. Maybe he'd wanted something else. Something I couldn't give because I was too busy being strong myself. I kept reading. The emails became more coded after that initial confession. References to meetings that I now knew were hotel rooms. References to the project that was clearly their affair. But then I found something else. Attached to an email from 4 months ago was a PDF document. I opened it. My blood ran cold. It was a real estate contract. For a penthouse in the Pearl District. Purchase price $450,000, buyer Victoria Chen, down payment source $150,000. Personal account remaining financing $300,000, mortgage. But it was the signature page that made my hands start to shake. 3 signatures, Victoria Chen, James Mitchell, and a third name that made no sense at all. Dr. Marcus Chen. I stared at that name, my mind racing. Marcus Chen was Victoria's husband. Or rather, her late husband. He'd died 3 years ago in a car accident. I'd attended the funeral. I'd held Victoria while she cried. But this contract was dated 4 months ago. April 2024. I quickly opened a new browser tab and searched Marcus Chen Death Portland 2021. The results appeared immediately. A news article from 3 years ago. Local doctor dies in tragic accident. Dr. Marcus Chen, 42, killed when his car went off the road during a storm. There were photos, a funeral notice, obituary. Everything looked legitimate. But there was his signature on a contract dated 4 months ago. Either someone had forged his signature, or Marcus Chen was alive. I sat back from the laptop, my mind spinning. This wasn't just an affair. This was something bigger, something more dangerous. James wasn't just cheating on me. He was involved in some kind of fraud, some kind of scheme involving a man who was supposed to be dead. And I had no idea how deep it went. I heard the garage door opening. James and Lily were home. I closed the laptop carefully, making sure everything was exactly as I'd found it. Walked downstairs on shaking legs. "Mom!" Lily burst through the door, muddy and glowing with exertion. "I scored 2 goals. "That's amazing, sweetheart." I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of grass and sweat and childhood. I'm so proud of you. Over her shoulder, I saw James watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. How's your headache? He asked. Better, I lied. Much better. That night, after Lily was asleep and James was in his office catching up on work, I sat in the darkness of our bedroom and tried to process what I'd discovered. My husband was having an affair with my cousin. They'd bought a penthouse together. A man who was supposed to be dead had signed the contract. And James had used money from somewhere to finance this. Money that should have been going to our daughter's future. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what I was really dealing with. I needed help. But who could I trust? I thought about my father, Henry Mitchell. But my relationship with him had always been complicated. He'd raised me after my mother died, but there had always been a distance between us, as if I was a duty rather than a daughter. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That my husband signed a real estate contract with a dead man, they'd think I was crazy. No, I needed to be smart about this. I needed evidence, real irrefutable evidence, and I needed an ally. I pulled out my phone and searched for something I'd read weeks ago, an article about financial fraud in immigrant communities. The author was Elena Rodriguez, an investigative journalist for the Portland Tribune. I found her contact information on the paper's website. At 1 a.m., I composed an email. Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a CFO at a medical technology company, and I believe I've uncovered a complex financial fraud involving my family. I've read your work on similar cases, and I'm hoping you might be willing to speak with me. I understand if you're too busy or if this falls outside your usual scope, but I'm running out of options, and I think this story is bigger than just my personal situation. Please let me know if you'd be willing to meet. Respectfully, Sarah Mitchell. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I lay down in the darkness and waited for morning. 2 days later, I met Elena Rodriguez at a small coffee shop in the Hawthorne district, far enough from downtown that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Elena was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with dark curly hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore jeans and a leather jacket, looking more like an artist than a journalist. Thank you for meeting me, I said as we sat down with our coffees. Your email intrigued me, Elena said, pulling out a notebook. You said you're a CFO who's discovered fraud. That's not something I hear every day. Usually it's the other way around. The CFO is the one doing the fraud. Despite everything, I almost smiled. I wish that were the case. It would be simpler. So what's going on? I took a breath and began to explain. Not everything. I wasn't ready to expose all the painful details of my husband's betrayal, but I told her about the financial irregularities, the money transfers to Victoria's business, the real estate contract signed by a man who was supposedly dead. Elena listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, she sat back and studied me. This Marcus Chen, she said. Tell me more about him. He was Victoria's husband, or is apparently. He was a doctor, died 3 years ago in a car accident, or that's what we were all told. Elena's expression changed. Wait, Marcus Chen, a doctor, died in 2021. You know something? Maybe. She pulled out her laptop and began typing. 2 years ago, I investigated a case involving fraud in the Vietnamese American community. An older man who was scammed by someone claiming to be a doctor. The fake doctor used the name Marcus Chen, but he disappeared before we could verify his identity or file charges. She turned the laptop toward me, showing me a grainy photo from a security camera. My blood turned to ice. It was him, the same man from the photos at Marcus and Victoria's wedding, the same man at the funeral. That's him, I whispered. Elena's face was grim. Then we have a problem, because if this is the same Marcus Chen I investigated, he's not a doctor. He's a con artist. He has at least 3 known aliases and has been running scams across the West Coast for years. But the death certificate can be faked, especially if you have the right connections and enough money. I felt the world tilting again. So Victoria's husband never died. He just disappeared. And now he's back and they're working together. And involving your husband, Elena added. The question is, what are they planning? I thought about the penthouse, the money transfers, the pattern of lies. They're planning something, I said slowly. Something that requires that much money, that much secrecy. And I swallowed hard. I think they're planning to take everything I have. Elena nodded. Then we need to figure out what their plan is before they execute it. And we need to build a case that's so airtight they can't wriggle out of it. You'll help me. I'm a journalist. This is exactly the kind of story I live for. But I have one condition. When this is over, when we've exposed whatever fraud they're running, I get to write about it. Anonymously, if you prefer. But this story needs to be told. Other people need to know how these scams work. I hesitated for only a moment. Then I nodded. Deal. We shook hands, and for the first time since I'd found that message on James's iPad, I didn't feel quite so alone. Over the next week, Elena and I worked together, piecing together the puzzle. Elena had connections in the police department, in the business licensing office, in the county recorder's office. She showed me how to pull public records, how to trace corporate filings, how to find patterns that normal people would miss. What we discovered was even worse than I'd feared. The penthouse wasn't just a love nest, it was part of a larger operation. Victoria Chen and Associates LLC wasn't a real consulting business. It was a shell company designed to funnel money, and the money going into it wasn't just coming from our personal savings. Elena discovered that James had been making transfers from his company's accounts too. Small amounts at first, then larger and larger sums. Over the past year, he'd transferred nearly $200,000 from Heritage Design's operating account to Victoria's shell company. He's embezzling from his own company, Elena said as we reviewed the documents in her cluttered apartment. And if anyone finds out, he'll go to jail. Unless he blames someone else, I said slowly, a horrible thought dawning on me. Elena looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I'm his wife. I have access to the company accounts. He set that up years ago so I could help with financial planning and tax preparation. My voice was hollow. If anyone discovers the embezzlement, he could claim it was me. Elena's face darkened. That would be the perfect cover. You're a CFO. You have the expertise. You have the access. And if you're frantically trying to prove your innocence, they'd be long gone, I finished, with all the money. We stared at each other across Elena's kitchen table, the full horror of the situation settling over us. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coordinated fraud designed to destroy me and enrich them. Victoria, James, and Marcus had been planning this for months, maybe years, and I'd suspected nothing. We need to go to the police, Elena said. No, my voice was sharp. Not yet. Sarah, if we go to the police now with what we have, they'll just deny everything. James will say I'm a vindictive wife making up stories. Victoria will say she doesn't know what I'm talking about. And Marcus, who's supposed to be dead, will just disappear again. So what do you suggest? I need more evidence. I need proof that Marcus is alive. I need documentation of their plan. I need something so concrete they can't deny it. Elena shook her head. That's dangerous. If they realize you know... They won't. I've been pretending everything is fine for weeks now. I can keep pretending. And what about your daughter if this gets ugly? I thought about Lily, about her innocent smile, about the way she still believed her parents loved each other. That's why I have to do this right, I said quietly. Not for revenge, but to make sure she's protected. To make sure they can't hurt her. Elena studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, but we do this carefully. And the moment I think you're in danger, we're going to the police. Deal? Deal day, I see. Tembe day. That weekend I did something I'd been planning since my conversation with Elena. I went to see a lawyer. Patricia Nguyen's office was in a nondescript building in Northwest Portland. She was a family lawyer who specialized in high-conflict divorces, particularly those involving business assets. She was also Vietnamese American, which meant she might have insights into Victoria's background that others wouldn't. Thank you for seeing me on short notice, I said as I sat down in her office. Patricia was in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed with keen eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. Your email mentioned you needed advice about protecting assets in a complicated divorce situation. Tell me what's going on. I laid it all out for her. The affair, the embezzlement, the fake death, the shell company, everything. When I finished, Patricia leaned back in her chair and let out a low whistle. Mrs. Mitchell, what you're describing isn't just grounds for divorce. It's grounds for criminal charges, multiple criminal charges. I know, but right now I need to know if I file for divorce, can I protect my daughter? Can I protect our assets from being drained while the case is pending? Patricia nodded. Yes, we can file for an emergency restraining order that freezes all joint accounts. We can request sole custody with supervised visitation given the circumstances. And we can document everything you've told me to present to both family court and potentially a criminal court. How long would that take? To file, I could have papers ready in 48 hours. But Sarah, she leaned forward. Are you sure you want to do this now? If you file, they'll know you know. They might accelerate whatever plan they have. I'm not filing yet, I sassy said. I just want to be ready. The moment I have enough evidence, the moment I think Lily or I are in danger, I want to be able to act immediately. Smart, Patricia pulled out a legal pad. Let's start building your case. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, every document I had, every screenshot, every bank statement. Patricia took notes, asked pointed questions, and by the end of the session she had a clear picture of what we were dealing with. I'm going to be honest with you, she said as I was preparing to leave. This is one of the most premeditated cases of marital fraud I've seen. Usually affairs are messy and emotional. This is calculated, clinical. That means they're dangerous. I know. Do you have somewhere safe you can go if you need to? Someone who can take care of Lily if something happens. I thought about my father but dismissed the idea immediately. We weren't close and I didn't want to involve him until I had to. I have my friend Elena, and Lily has a best friend whose parents would take her in an emergency. Good. Keep those connections strong. You might need them. As I walked to my car, I felt a strange sense of calm. I was no longer flailing in the dark trying to understand what was happening. I had allies. I had a plan. I had a way forward. Now I just needed the final pieces of evidence. The following Thursday was Halloween. Lily had been excited for weeks about her costume. She was going as a phoenix, inspired by a story I'd told her about rising from ashes and becoming stronger. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. James had promised to take her trick-or-treating in our neighborhood. It was one of those rare promises he'd actually kept over the years. You sure you don't want to come? He asked as they prepared to leave Lily resplendent in her red and gold costume. I have a headache, I lied. You two go have fun, take lots of pictures. After they left, I sat in the dark living room listening to the sounds of children laughing and running past our house. And I made a decision. I needed to know what was in that penthouse. I needed to see what they were hiding. Victoria's old apartment, the one she'd lived in before moving to the penthouse, was only 10 minutes away. I still had the key she'd given me years ago, for emergencies. This felt like an emergency. I grabbed my jacket and drove to her building. The doorman recognized me. Ms. Mitchell, here to see Ms. Chen. Just dropping something off, I said, holding up a gift bag I'd brought as a prop. She's not home, but I have a key. He waved me through and I took the elevator to the 8th floor. My hands were shaking as I unlocked Victoria's door. The apartment was mostly empty. She'd clearly moved most of her things to the penthouse. But there were still some items left behind. Boxes in the corner. A desk with papers scattered across it. I moved through the rooms quickly, photographing everything with my phone. In the bedroom closet, I found men's clothes. James's size. In the bathroom, a man's razor. Men's cologne. In the kitchen, James's favorite brand of coffee. Evidence retry JN continue evidence of their affair, but nothing I didn't already know. I moved to the home office where Victoria's desk still stood against the wall. The drawers were mostly empty, but in the bottom drawer I found something that made my breath catch. A journal, leather-bound, expensive-looking. I opened it to the first page. The date was 18 months ago, right around the time Victoria had moved to Portland. I started reading, my heart pounding. June 15th, 2023. Today I arrived in Portland. Sarah picked me up from the airport, smiling that perfect smile of hers. She has no idea why I'm really here. My mother spent her entire life in the shadow of Sarah's mother. Margaret is so beautiful, so successful, so lucky. I grew up hearing those words, hearing how Sarah had everything while we had nothing. I'm here to take it all back. For my mother. For myself. Sarah thinks she's saving me. She has no idea I'm here to destroy her. I felt sick reading those words, but I forced myself to continue. August 3rd, 2023, met James today at a company event Sarah hosted. He's handsome, successful, but there's something broken in his eyes. Sarah is too busy with her career to notice. He's perfect. Weak enough to manipulate, important enough to matter. This is going to be easier than I thought. October 12th, 2023. James and I had our first real conversation today. He stayed late at a networking event after Sarah left early for some work emergency. We talked for 3 hours. He told me he feels inadequate next to Sarah, that she's too strong, too independent, too perfect, that he doesn't know how to be the man she needs. I told him I understood. That strength can be lonely, that sometimes the strongest people push others away without meaning to. He looked at me like I was the first person who'd ever really seen him. Hook, line, and sinker. February 14th, 2024. We slept together for the first time. Valentine's Day. How perfect. James felt guilty afterward, of course. Talked about Sarah, about their marriage, about whether they could fix things. I told him what he wanted to hear, that Sarah would never change, that he deserved to feel valued, that what we have is real. The truth, I don't love James. I barely even like him. He's a means to an end. But he's useful, and he's falling in love with me, which makes him very easy to control. My hands were shaking now, but I couldn't stop reading. April 20th, 2024. The biggest surprise, Marcus is alive. I couldn't believe it when he contacted me through social media. After 3 years of thinking he was dead there, he was messaging me from some internet cafe in Vietnam. He'd faked his death to escape gambling debts and fraud charges. He'd been living in Southeast Asia, but now he wants to come back to the States. He needs money and new identity papers. I told him about James, about Sarah, about the plan I'd been developing to take everything from her. Marcus had a better idea. Why stop at Sarah's personal assets? James owns a company. There's real money there. We take it all. The business, the house, the savings, everything. And we make sure Sarah takes the fall. It's brilliant. It's exactly what I needed. Marcus arrives next month. May 30th, 2024, Marcus is here. He's using the penthouse we bought with Sarah's money. There's poetry in that. We've been planning for weeks now. James thinks it's just an affair, just a romance. He has no idea Marcus exists. The plan is simple. 1. Continue transferring money from Heritage Design into shell accounts. 2. Forge Sarah's signature on key documents. 3. Create a paper trail that makes her look like the embezzler. 4. When we have everything, we disappear to Costa Rica. 5. James comes with us. He's in too deep to back out now. Sarah will be arrested. She'll lose everything. Her career, her reputation, her freedom. And Lily, well, if Sarah is in prison, James gets full custody. And we'll make sure Lily's trust fund is very well managed. By us. My mother would be so proud. July 15th, 2024, sometimes I feel guilty. Not about James, he made his choice. But about Sarah. She's been nothing but kind to me. She sponsored my visa, helped me get settled, welcomed me into her home. But then I remember my mother's face. The bitterness, the envy, the way she'd cry and say, "Why does Margaret get everything while I have nothing?" Sarah had a perfect childhood while I struggled. She got the education, the career, the family. She never had to fight for anything. She doesn't deserve to have it all when I've had nothing. So no, I don't feel that guilty. This is justice. September 28, 2024. Getting close now. We have $180,000 in the offshore accounts. Another few weeks and we'll have enough to disappear comfortably. James is getting nervous. He knows something is wrong, but he's in too deep to question it. Every time he wavers, I just have to touch him, remind him how much he loves me, and he falls in line. Men are so predictable. Sarah still suspects nothing. She's too busy being perfect, being strong, being everything her mother wanted her to be. She has no idea her perfect life is about to burn to the ground. The journal ended there. The last entry was from 2 weeks ago. I stood in Victoria's empty apartment, the journal in my hands, feeling something inside me break open. Not sadness, not grief, rage, pure cold rage. Victoria hadn't betrayed me out of love for James. She'd betrayed me out of hatred, out of jealousy that went back generations. And she'd been planning to take my daughter from me. I took photos of every page of the journal, every single word. Then I found something else in the desk drawer, a folder labeled CR Plan. Inside were printouts, bank account numbers in Costa Rica, flight itineraries for 3 people, James Mitchell, Victoria Chen Marcus Chen, departure date November 15th, 2024, less than 2 weeks away, and at the bottom of the folder, a document that made my blood run cold. It was a petition for emergency custody, already filled out, ready to file. Petitioner James Mitchell requests emergency sole custody of minor child Lily Mitchell on the grounds that respondent Sarah Mitchell has been engaging in criminal activity, including embezzlement and fraud, making her an unfit parent and a danger to the child's well-being. They were going to take my daughter from me. They were going to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, take Lily away and disappear with her to another country. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a coordinated attack designed to destroy every aspect of my life. I photographed everything. Every document, every piece of paper. Then I heard something that made my heart stop. The sound of a key in the apartment door. Victoria was home. I had maybe 5 seconds before she walked in. I shoved the journal and papers back into the drawer, slammed it shut, and looked around frantically. The bedroom. I could hide in the closet. I ran as quietly as possible and pressed myself into the back of Victoria's walk-in closet behind a rack of clothes. The apartment door opened. Victoria's voice talking on the phone. "No, Marcus, I told you. We need to wait 2 more weeks. If we move too early, it could fall apart." A pause. "James is fine. He's getting cold feet, but I can handle him. He's too weak to back out now." Another pause, then Victoria laughed. It was a sound I'd never heard from her before. Cold, calculating, cruel. Sarah suspects nothing. She's too busy playing perfect wife and perfect mother to notice her life is crumbling around her. By the time she figures it out, we'll be gone. I held my breath pressed against the back wall of the closet. Victoria walked into the bedroom. I could see her through the crack in the closet door. She was on the phone pacing. "The account has $220,000 now. 1 more big transfer and we're done. Then we just need to plant the evidence in Sarah's home office and call the FBI." My whole body went cold. "The timing is perfect," Victoria continued. "After Thanksgiving, when everyone is distracted, James will file the custody petition claim he just discovered Sarah's crimes. We'll have Lily before Sarah even knows what's happening." She paused, listening. "I know it sounds harsh, but this is what needs to happen. My mother spent her whole life being compared to Sarah's mother and coming up short. I spent my whole life hearing about how perfect Sarah was. This is payback, for both of us." Another pause. "I have to go. James is bringing Lily back from trick-or-treating soon, and I'm supposed to meet them for ice cream. The devoted family friend, right?" She laughed again, that terrible sound. "See you tonight, at the penthouse." She hung up and left the bedroom. I waited until I heard the apartment door close behind her. Waited another 5 minutes to be sure she was really gone. Then I emerged from the closet on shaking legs. I had everything I needed now. The journal, the documents, Victoria's own words admitting to the entire scheme. But I also knew something else. They were planning to plant evidence in my home, to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, and they were planning to take my daughter. I had less than 2 weeks to stop them. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. James and Lily were already back sitting in the kitchen eating candy and laughing about the neighbors' elaborate decorations. "Mom," Lily ran to me, her phoenix costume rustling. "You should have seen Mr. Peterson's house. He had a real smoke machine." "That sounds amazing, sweetie." I pulled her close, breathing in her scent, chocolate and artificial strawberry and innocent joy. Over her head, I saw James watching me. For a moment, our eyes met. Did he know I knew? Could he see it in my face? But I'd had weeks to practice this mask. Weeks to perfect the performance of the wife who suspected nothing. I smiled at him. "Did you take lots of pictures?" "Of course." He held up his phone. "Want to see?" "I'd love to." We sat together, the 3 of us, looking at photos of our daughter in her phoenix costume, and I thought, this is the last normal moment we'll have as a family. After tonight, everything changes. Later, after Lily was in bed, I called Elena. "I need to see you, tonight. It's urgent." "I'll come to you. 20 minutes. When she arrived, I spread everything out on my kitchen table. The photos of the journal pages, the documents, the custody petition, everything. Elena read through it all, her face growing darker with each page. "Jesus Christ," she whispered when she finished. Sarah, this is worse than we thought. They're planning to take Lily, I said, my voice hollow. They're going to frame me and take my daughter to another country. We need to go to the police, right now, tonight. No, Elena looked at me like I was crazy. What do you mean, no, Sarah? You have evidence of conspiracy, fraud, kidnapping. I have photos of a journal that could be fake. I have documents I found in an apartment I technically broke into. I have a recording of Victoria that I made without her knowledge or consent. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings. If you were part of the conversation... I wasn't part of the conversation. I was hiding in a closet. Elena closed her eyes. So the recording is inadmissible. And the rest of it? It proves they're planning something, but a good lawyer could argue it proves I'm a jealous wife making things up. Then what do we do? I took a deep breath. We let them think they're winning. We let them make their move. And we catch them in the act. That's incredibly dangerous. I know, but it's the only way to get evidence that will stand up in court. Evidence that will protect Lily. Evidence that will put all three of them in prison where they belong. Elena shook her head. I don't like this. Neither do I, but I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Sarah. Not when it comes to my daughter's safety. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Elena sighed. Okay, but we do this smart. We don't take any unnecessary risks. And the very second I think you or Lily are in real danger, I'm calling the police. Deal. Deal. Elena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're not alone in this. Remember that. For the first time in weeks, I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. I couldn't afford to break down. Not yet. Not until this was over. The next morning, I had a realization. There was one piece of the puzzle I still didn't understand. One question that had been nagging at me since I'd first discovered the affair. Why had my father been so distant lately? Henry Mitchell had never been a warm man. After my mother died when I was 16, he'd raised me with a kind of dutiful coldness. I always felt like I was a responsibility he'd inherited rather than a daughter he loved. But over the past 6 months, he'd been even more remote than usual. He'd stopped coming to family dinners, stopped calling to check on Lily, stopped showing any interest in my life at all. At the time, I'd assumed he was just getting older, more withdrawn. But now, with everything I'd learned, a terrible suspicion was forming. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the Heritage Design Company portal, the one James had given me access to years ago for financial planning purposes. I searched for the board of directors. My father had retired from his own business years ago, but James had invited him to join Heritage's advisory board as a courtesy. I found the records of board meetings, attendance logs, voting records. And there it was. 6 months ago, there had been a vote to approve a major financial restructuring. It required board approval for the transfers James had been making. The motion had passed with 3 votes. 1 vote, James Mitchell, CEO. 1 vote, Richard Stevens, COO. 1 vote, Henry Mitchell, advisory board member. My father had voted to approve the transfers that were embezzling from the company. My father knew. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more records. There were emails, a paper trail I'd never thought to look for because why would I? Why would I ever suspect my own father? An email from James to my father dated 8 months ago. Henry, I need to talk to you about something confidential. It's about Sarah and some concerns I have about our marriage. Can we meet? My father's response. Of course. Come by the house tomorrow. And then weeks later, another email. Henry, I'm grateful for your advice and support during this difficult time. Sarah is exactly as you described. Strong to the point of being cold. I don't think she's capable of the kind of partnership I need. My father's response. I've known that about Sarah since she was a child. She's too much like her mother. Too independent, too proud. Sometimes people like that need to be humbled before they can truly understand what matters. I stared at that email, feeling something inside me shatter. My father hadn't just known about James's affair. He'd encouraged it. He'd participated in it. He'd helped James justify betraying me. There was a knock on my office door. My assistant poked her head in. Mrs. Mitchell, are you okay? You've been in here for 2 hours. I looked up, realizing I'd been sitting frozen, staring at my computer screen. I'm fine, I said automatically. Just working through something. But I wasn't fine. My husband was betraying me. My cousin was trying to destroy me. and my father was helping them do it. The three people who should have protected me were working together to take everything I had. That evening, I did something I'd been avoiding. I called my father. "Sarah." His voice was cool as always. "This is unexpected. I need to talk to you, Dad, about James." A pause. "What about him?" "I think something's wrong. I think he might be having an affair." The lie came easily now. I'd had so much practice. "Why would you think that?" My father's voice was carefully neutral. "Little things. He's been distant. He's been coming home late. I found a hotel charge on his credit card." "And what did he say when you asked him about it?" "I haven't asked him. I wanted to talk to you first. Get your advice. You've always been good at reading people." Another pause. Longer this time. "Sarah, do you want my honest opinion?" "Of course." "I think you're too hard on James. You always have been. You're so focused on your career, on being strong and independent, that you don't see how it affects the people around you." The words hit like a slap, even though I'd expected something like this. "So you think if he's having an affair, it's my fault?" "I think people need to feel needed. And you, Sarah, you've never needed anyone. Even as a child, you were so self-sufficient, so determined to do everything yourself. Mom died when I was 16. I had to be self-sufficient. Your mother spoiled you before she died, made you think you could do anything, be anything. She never taught you humility." I closed my eyes, feeling an old, familiar pain. "Is that what you think? That I needed to be taught humility? I think everyone benefits from understanding their limitations. And James, does he get the benefit of understanding his limitations? Or is this only a lesson for me? Don't be dramatic, Sarah. If James is unhappy, you need to look at why. What are you doing to make him feel valued? What are you doing to support him?" I wanted to scream, to tell him I knew everything, to ask how he could possibly justify what he'd done. But I kept my voice steady. "You're right, Dad. I'll think about what you said. Thank you for the advice." After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my office and let myself feel it. Not just the betrayal from James and Victoria, but this deeper betrayal, this wound that had been there all along, just waiting for me to finally see it. My father had never loved me. Not really. He'd raised me out of duty, out of obligation to my mother, and he'd resented me for it. Maybe he'd even resented my mother for dying and leaving him with a daughter he'd never wanted. And now when I needed him most, he'd chosen their side over mine. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to James listening to him breathe, and I felt nothing but a vast emptiness where my family used to be. At 2 a.m., I got up quietly and went downstairs to my home office. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file I'd been building. Project Phoenix. Every piece of evidence, every document, every photo, every recording. I had everything I needed to expose them. But exposing them wasn't enough. I needed to make sure they couldn't hurt Lily, couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. I needed them to confess, to admit what they'd done on record, to be caught so red-handed that no lawyer could get them out of it. And I had an idea how to make that happen. But it was risky, incredibly risky. If it went wrong, I could lose everything. But if I did nothing, I'd lose everything anyway. I made my decision. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Elena. "I have a plan. It's dangerous, but it's the only way. Can you meet me tomorrow? I'll explain everything." Her response came almost immediately. "I'll be there. Be careful, Sarah." I looked at those words, "be careful," and almost laughed. It was too late for careful. It was time to fight back. The morning after I made my decision, I woke up with absolute clarity. I knew what I had to do. I knew the risks, and I accepted them, because the alternative, losing Lily, losing my freedom, losing everything while they escaped to live happily on stolen money, was unacceptable. I got up before James showered, dressed in my sharpest suit. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes had changed. They were harder now, colder, good. I was going to need that coldness for what came next. I met Elena at a diner on the outskirts of town, far from anywhere I might be recognized. She was already there when I arrived, nursing a cup of black coffee and looking worried. "You look different," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "I feel different. Sarah, before you tell me this plan, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't do anything that puts you or Lily in real physical danger." No matter how much you want justice, it's not worth your life. I met her eyes. I promise I'll be as safe as possible. But Elena, they're planning to take my daughter to another country. They're planning to frame me for crimes that could put me in prison for years. I can't just wait and hope the legal system protects me. Elena sighed. Okay, tell me the plan. I pulled out my laptop and opened a document I'd been working on all night. Right now, they think they're in control. They think I don't know anything. That's our advantage. Okay? They're planning their final move for November 15th. That's 12 days from now. They'll make one last big transfer plant evidence in my house that makes me look like the embezzler, and then James will file for emergency custody of Lily. Right. So we let them think everything is going according to plan, but we document everything. We catch them in the act. And when they move to frame me, we have law enforcement ready to arrest them instead. Elena frowned. That's the broad strokes. But how do we actually execute it? First, I need to install security cameras in my house. Hidden ones. I need to record them planting the fake evidence. That could work, but it only catches James. What about Victoria and Marcus? That's where it gets tricky. I took a deep breath. I need to get into that penthouse. I need to record them discussing the plan. I need evidence that all three of them are working together. How are you going to get into the penthouse without them knowing? I'm not going to sneak in. I'm going to walk right through the front door. Elena stared at me. I'm going to tell Victoria I know about the affair. I'm going to say I want to meet her and James together to discuss our options, to see if we can work something out like adults. She'll never believe that. Yes, she will, because I'm going to play the part of the reasonable woman who just wants what's best for everyone, the woman who's willing to negotiate, the woman who's too proud to admit her marriage failed, so she's looking for a civilized way to end it. Elena shook her head slowly. That's actually brilliant. She'll think you're in denial, that you're weak. Exactly. And while I'm there, I'll have a recording device on me. I'll get them to talk about the plan, to admit what they've done. And then we go to the police with everything, the recordings, the financial documents, the journal, all of it. We hand them a case so airtight that even the best lawyers can't fight it. Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking it through. There are a lot of ways this could go wrong, she said finally. I know. If they suspect you're recording, if they realize you know more than you're letting on, I'll be careful. And what about your father? You said he's involved too. My jaw tightened. I have a separate plan for him. What kind of plan? The kind that makes sure he knows exactly how much he lost by choosing them over his own daughter. Elena studied my face. Sarah, be careful that this doesn't become about revenge. Revenge makes people sloppy. This isn't revenge, I said quietly. This is justice and protection. I'm not doing this to hurt them. I'm doing this to save my daughter. Okay. Elena pulled out her own notebook. Then let's make sure we do this right. We need to plan every detail. We need backup plans for our backup plans. Because if this goes wrong, you could lose everything. I know. Then let's get to work. Over the next 3 days, I methodically prepared for what was coming. Day 1, the cameras. I hired a home security company to install cameras throughout the house. I told James it was because there had been break-ins in the neighborhood a lie, but one he accepted without question. The technicians installed obvious cameras in the living room, kitchen, and exterior of the house. But they also installed 3 hidden cameras per my specific request. One in my home office where I suspected they would plant the fake evidence, one in the master bedroom, and one in the hallway upstairs. These cameras were virtually invisible, built into smoke detectors and picture frames. The footage streamed directly to a cloud account that only I had access to. You're sure these can't be detected? I asked the technician. Not without professional equipment. To the naked eye, they're just regular household items. Perfect. Day 2, the tracking with Elena's help. I installed tracking software on my phone that would continuously broadcast my location. If I went to the penthouse and something went wrong, Elena would know exactly where I was. I also bought a small recording device, the kind journalists use for interviews. It was voice-activated and could record for up to 10 hours. I tested it dozens of times to make sure it worked perfectly. Day 3, the legal preparation. I met with Patricia and Gwen again and handed her everything. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. This is the most comprehensive documentation I've ever seen from a client, Patricia said, looking through the files. You've essentially done the work of a forensic accountant and a private investigator. I'm a CFO. I know how to follow money trails. Yes, but most people in your situation are too emotionally devastated to think this clearly. How are you holding it together? I thought about that question. How was I holding it together? I think I said slowly, I've been falling apart for a long time. So long that I got used to being broken. This, I gestured at the files. This is me putting myself back together, piece by piece, on my own terms. Patricia looked at me with something like respect. Well, you've done excellent work. With this evidence, we can not only win the divorce, but we can pursue criminal charges, and we can ensure you get full custody of Lily. What about my father? Patricia's expression hardened. His involvement is documented here. He'll face consequences too. Probably not criminal charges, he didn't directly embezzle anything, but civil liability for enabling fraud. Definitely. Good. Sarah, I have to ask. Are you sure you want to go through with the plan Elena told me about the recording at the penthouse? Because we have enough here to go to the police right now. We have enough to suggest a crime. But without them actually attempting to plant evidence without recorded confessions, a good lawyer could argue it's all circumstantial. That I'm a bitter wife making accusations. Patricia nodded reluctantly. You're right. A confession on tape would be the nail in the coffin. But please be careful. If they even suspect you know, they won't. I've been playing this role for weeks now. I can play it a little longer. On November 10th, 5 days before their planned escape, I made my move. I waited until James was at work and Lily was at school. Then I called Victoria. Sarah, she sounded surprised. Is everything okay? I injected just the right amount of shakiness into my voice. Not too much that would be suspicious. Just enough to sound like a woman who was barely holding it together. Victoria, I need to talk to you. About James. A pause. I could almost hear her mind racing. What about James? I know, I said simply. I know about the affair. Silence. Victoria, are you there? I'm here. Her voice was carefully controlled. Sarah, I don't know what you think you know, but please don't lie to me. I've seen the messages. I've seen the hotel charges. I've known for weeks. Another long silence. Are you going to tell James you know? She asked finally. That's why I'm calling. I need to talk to both of you. Together. I need to understand what's happening. I need to know if my marriage is really over or if there's something worth saving. You want to talk to both of us? Together. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't keep living in this limbo. I can't keep pretending everything is fine while my husband is... I let my voice break slightly. I just need to know the truth. All of it. And then I can decide what to do. I could hear Victoria breathing on the other end of the line. She was thinking, calculating, wondering if this was a trap. Where would you want to meet? She asked carefully. Somewhere private, where we can talk honestly without worrying about being overheard. Maybe your place, my place. You have that new apartment, right? The one in Pearl District. I'd rather not do this in my home. And a public place feels too exposed. More silence. She was weighing her options. Finally, okay, when tonight? After Lily goes to bed. Can you be there at 9, Tim? What about James? I'll tell him I need him to meet me there. That I have something important to discuss. He doesn't need to know you'll be there until he arrives. This feels like a setup, Sarah. I know, but I swear I just want to talk. I want to understand, and then I want to figure out what's best for Lily. I paused. Please, Victoria. Whatever else has happened, we were family once. Can we at least try to handle this like adults? I could hear her calculating, trying to figure out the angle. Finally, she made her decision. Okay, tonight at 9. I'll text you the address. Thank you. After I hung up, I sat very still, my phone in my hand. Elena's voice came from the doorway. Did she buy it? I hadn't even heard Elena let herself in with the spare key I'd given her. I think so. She's suspicious, but she's also arrogant. She thinks I'm weak. She thinks I'm just a woman in denial looking for closure. Which is exactly what you want her to think. Exactly. Elena came into the room and sat down across from me. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember the plan. Get there early. Make sure your recording device is working. Keep your phone on so I can track you. And if anything at all feels wrong, you leave immediately. Understood. Understood. And Sarah, don't let them provoke you. No matter what they say, no matter how much they try to make you angry or hurt, you stay calm. Stay focused. I will. Elena reached across and squeezed my hand. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. You know that? I looked at her, this woman who'd become my closest ally in the darkest time of my life, and felt my throat tighten with emotion. I'm not brave, I said. I'm just a mother trying to protect her child. That's what bravery is. That evening, I followed my normal routine. I made dinner for Lily and James. We ate together as a family, Lily chattering about her day at school, James checking his phone between bites. I have to go out tonight, I said casually as I cleared the dishes. Book club meeting. I'll be back by 11. James looked up. Book club, I thought that was Tuesdays. They changed it to Thursdays this month. Something about the library schedule. He nodded, already losing interest. Okay, I'll put Lily to bed. Thanks. I went upstairs to change, my heart pounding. In my bedroom, I put on the recording device, a small button that clipped to my blouse, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. I tested it one more time, whispering check check, and playing it back. Crystal clear. I tucked my phone into my purse, made sure the tracking app was active, and took a deep breath. This was it. I kissed Lily goodnight, told her I loved her, held her just a moment longer than usual. Mom, you're squishing me, she complained, but she was laughing. Sorry, baby. I just love you so much. I love you too, Mom, even when you're being weird. I left before I could start crying. The Pearl District Tower was a sleek modern building with a doorman who looked like he'd been hired more for appearance than security skills. Good evening, I said, walking in with the confidence of someone who belonged there. I'm here to see Victoria Chen, penthouse. Name is Sarah Mitchell. She's expecting me. He checked his computer, nodded, and waved me toward the elevators. Top floor. You'll need this key for elevator access. The elevator was glass-walled, giving me a view of Portland spreading out below as I rose higher and higher. By the time I reached the 12th floor, my stomach was in knots. But my face was calm, composed, ready. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. It was beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors, modern furniture in shades of gray and white. The kind of place that cost more per month than most people made in a year. Bought with my money, with Lily's college fund. Victoria was waiting in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand. She'd dressed carefully, jeans and a cashmere sweater, deliberately casual, but expensive. Her hair was down, her makeup minimal. She looked like the innocent victim of a complicated situation, not a woman who'd orchestrated an elaborate fraud. Sarah, she set down her wine glass and stood. You're early. I wanted to talk to you first, before James gets here. Okay. She gestured to the couch. Sit. Can I get you something to drink? No, thank you. I sat, keeping my body language open, non-threatening. The recording device was active, capturing every word. Victoria sat across from me, studying my face. So, she said. You know? I know. How long? 3 weeks, maybe 4. I lose track of the days sometimes. And you didn't say anything. I gave her a sad smile. What was I supposed to say? Hey, honey, are you cheating on me with my cousin? I kept hoping I was wrong, that there was some other explanation. Victoria nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Sarah. I never wanted to hurt you. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. I wondered how many times she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head. Then why did you do it? I asked, letting real pain creep into my voice. We were family. I helped you come to America. I welcomed you into my home, my life. And you? I know. Victoria looked down at her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen. James and I, we just connected. We understood each other in a way that he and I didn't. I finished for her. I'm sorry, but yes. James felt invisible next to you, Sarah. You're so strong, so successful. He needed someone who made him feel needed. And you needed what my husband, my life. Something flickered across Victoria's face. For just a moment, I saw the real her, the one who'd written those journal entries, the one full of hatred and envy. But she smoothed it away quickly. I didn't plan this, she said. It just happened. How long? I asked. How long has it been going on? Does it matter? To me it does. She sighed. 14 months, since last September. Over a year. While I was working late, while I was taking care of our daughter, while I was trying to hold our family together, they'd been together for over a year. And what happens now? I asked. What do you want? What do you mean, do you love him? Does he love you? Are you planning a future together? Victoria opened her mouth to answer, but before she could, we heard the elevator. James. My husband walked into the penthouse, and for a moment he didn't see me. He was looking at Victoria, his face open and unguarded. Then he saw me sitting on the couch. All the color drained from his face. Sarah. My name came out as barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Hello, James. Victoria invited me over. We've been having a very interesting conversation. He looked between us, confused and panicked. What's going on? Sit down, I said calmly. We need to talk. All three of us. Sarah, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, sit down. He sat looking like a man being led to the gallows. For a moment we were all silent. Just three people in a beautiful apartment surrounded by lies. Then I spoke. I know about the affair, I said, my voice steady. I've known for weeks, and before you start making excuses or telling me it was a mistake or that you still love me, I want you to know something. They waited. I'm not here to scream at you. I'm not here to beg you to come back or to fight for our marriage. I'm here because I need to understand the truth. All of it. And then I can decide what to do next. James found his voice. What do you mean, all of it? I mean, I want to know how long this has been going on. I want to know if you're planning a future together. I want to know... I looked directly at Victoria if there's anything else I should know about. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. Like what, eh? Like the penthouse I'm sitting in right now, the one that costs $450,000, the one bought with money from our daughter's college fund. James went even paler. You know about that? I'm a CFO, James. I know about all of it. Sarah, I was going to pay it back. Were you? I turned to Victoria. Was he going to pay it back, or were you planning something else? Victoria's face was a mask, revealing nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I've seen the financial records. I've seen the transfers to your shell company. I've seen the offshore accounts. Dead silence. James looked at Victoria with confusion and dawning horror. What is she talking about? What shell company? What offshore accounts? And there it was. The crack in their alliance. James didn't know about the full extent of the plan. Victoria had been playing him, too. James, Victoria said carefully, Sarah is upset. She's seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of the journal. Because I found your journal, Victoria. The one where you wrote about how much you hated me. About how you came to America specifically to destroy my life. About how you've been planning this for over a year with your husband. My husband is dead, Victoria said, but her voice had lost its confidence. Is he because I saw his signature on the penthouse contract, dated 4 months ago? James stood up abruptly. What the fuck is going on, Victoria? What is she talking about? She's lying. I'm not lying. I looked at James. Marcus Chen is alive. He faked his death 3 years ago to escape fraud charges, and he's been working with Victoria to embezzle money from your company. They've been setting me up to take the fall for it. That's insane, Victoria said, but she was looking at the door, calculating her exit. Is it? Then explain the offshore accounts. Explain why you have a fake death certificate for your husband. Explain... A door opened, the bedroom door, and Marcus Chen walked out. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Marcus Chen, the man who'd been dead for 3 years, stood in the doorway of the bedroom in jeans and a t-shirt, looking very much alive. He was older than in his photos, grayer with lines around his eyes. But it was definitely him. James stood there staring, looking like he might pass out. You've got to be fucking kidding me, he whispered. Marcus looked at Victoria. I told you this was a mistake. I told you she was too smart to fall for it. Shut up, Victoria hissed. No. Marcus walked into the living room. It's over. She knows. He turned to me. You must be Sarah. Victoria's told me so much about you. I kept my voice level professional. The recording device was capturing everything. Dr. Chen, Or should I say the man who's pretending to be Dr. Chen? He laughed, a short, bitter sound. I was a doctor, once, before the gambling debts and the fraud charges and the need to disappear. But yes, I'm Marcus, Victoria's very much alive husband. James found his voice. What the hell is happening, Victoria? You told me you were widowed. You told me? I told you what you needed to hear to stay compliant, Victoria said coldly. All pretense of warmth was gone now. You were supposed to make the transfers, keep your mouth shut, and follow the plan. But you got nervous, started asking questions, became a liability. A liability? James looked like he'd been slapped. I thought you loved me. I thought we were going to be together. God, you're pathetic. Victoria shook her head. James, you were a means to an end, a way to access Sarah's life. That's all you ever were. I watched my husband's face crumble, and despite everything, I felt a flash of pity for him. He'd been played, just like me. Maybe not as elaborately, but played nonetheless. So what was the plan? I asked, looking at Victoria. Steal the money, frame me for the embezzlement, and run off to Costa Rica. Was James supposed to come with you, or were you planning to leave him behind too? Oh, James was coming, Marcus said. We needed him to file for custody of your daughter. Victoria wanted to make sure you lost everything, money, freedom, and your child. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Why? I asked, looking at Victoria. Why go to such lengths? What did I ever do to you? And finally, Victoria's mask cracked completely. What did you do? You existed, Sarah. You existed and you were perfect. Perfect daughter, perfect career, perfect life. While my mother lived in your mother's shadow. While I grew up hearing about how wonderful you were. Do you know what that's like? To be compared to someone your entire life and always come up short. That's not my fault, I said quietly. No, but you benefited from it. You got everything. The love, the opportunities, the perfect family. What did I get, Scraps? And when my mother died, her last words were about your mother. About how Margaret always had such good luck. Even in death, she was thinking about you. So you decided to destroy me. I decided to take what should have been mine. We stared at each other across the room, and I saw the truth clearly now. This wasn't just about money or revenge. This was about a wound that went back generations, a jealousy so deep it had poisoned everything it touched. Well, I said, standing up, I guess there's nothing more to say. Where are you going? Victoria asked. Home, to my daughter, to start divorce proceedings and figure out how to rebuild my life. You're not going to the police? What would I tell them that my cousin and her supposedly dead husband conned my husband into embezzling from his own company? They'd need proof, evidence, and I'm sure you've been very careful about that. I saw Victoria relax slightly. She thought I was giving up, that I was just going to walk away. Perfect. Actually, I said, turning back, I am curious about one thing. My father. Does he know about all of this? Victoria and Marcus exchanged a look. He knows enough, Victoria said. He approved the transfers, helped James rationalize the affair. He's been very supportive. Why? Because Victoria smiled and it was ugly. He never wanted you either, Sarah. Your mother trapped him with a pregnancy. He only married her out of obligation. And when she died, he was stuck raising a daughter who reminded him every day of his failed escape. The words were designed to hurt, to break me. But I'd already suspected as much. The confirmation barely even stung. I see, I said calmly. Thank you for your honesty. I turned to James, who was still sitting on the couch, looking shell-shocked. I'll have divorce papers sent to your office next week. I'll be asking for sole custody of Lily, and I don't expect you to fight me on that. Do you understand? He nodded mutely. Good. I walked toward the elevator, every step measured and calm. Victoria called after me. That's it. You're just going to leave. I turned back one more time. What else would you like me to do? Victoria begged, scream, fall apart. That's what you want, isn't it? To see me broken. I want you to feel what I've felt my entire life. Jealousy, resentment, bitterness. I shook my head. No, thank you. I'd rather feel nothing at all. I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on their stunned faces, and as I descended toward the ground floor, I finally let myself breathe. I'd done it. I'd gotten them to confess everything. Every word had been recorded. I made it to my car before the shaking started. I sat in the driver's seat, hands trembling on the steering wheel, and pulled out my phone. Elena answered on the first ring. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay. I got it. I got everything." Everything. All three of them confessing. Marcus admitting he's alive. Victoria explaining the entire plan. James confirming he made the transfers. My voice cracked. They told me about my father, too. "Sarah, I'm okay. Really, it actually helps to have it confirmed. To know I wasn't imagining the distance. The coldness." "Where are you now?" "In my car, outside the building. I'm going to go home, get Lily, and take her to a hotel for the night. Then tomorrow we go to the police." "Good. Do you want me to come with you?" "No, I need to do this part alone. But thank you, Elena, for everything." "You did the hard part yourself. I just helped with logistics." I laughed, a raw, exhausted sound. "I don't think I could have survived this without you." "You're stronger than you think. Go get your daughter. Keep her safe. And tomorrow we end this." I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying every moment of the conversation. When I pulled into my driveway, the house was dark except for one light upstairs, Lily's room. I went inside quietly. James's car wasn't in the garage. He was probably still at the penthouse trying to process everything. I went upstairs and found Lily sitting up in bed reading by flashlight. "Mom, you're home early. Book club was shorter than I expected. Come on, sweetie, pack a bag. We're going on an adventure. An adventure on a school night. A special adventure. Just you and me. Hotel room, room service, movie marathon." Her face lit up. "Really? What about Dad?" "Dad's working late. It'll just be us girls." 20 minutes later, we were in the car with an overnight bag driving to a hotel across town. Lily fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window. I watched her sleep and felt something inside me finally settle. She was safe. I'd protected her. And tomorrow I'd make sure she stayed that way. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school as if it were any normal day. Then I drove directly to the Portland Police Department with Elena. We'd called ahead and asked to speak to a detective who specialized in white-collar crime. Detective James Cole met us in an interview room. He was a man in his mid-40s with tired eyes and the air of someone who'd seen every kind of fraud imaginable. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, shaking my hand. "My sergeant said you have information about a financial fraud case." "I do." I set my laptop on the table. "I have documentation of a conspiracy involving embezzlement, identity fraud, and attempted kidnapping, and I have recorded confessions from all three participants." His eyebrows rose. "That's quite a claim." "I know. Let me show you." For the next 2 hours, Elena and I walked him through everything. The bank statements showing the transfers, the real estate contract signed by a dead man, Victoria's journal detailing the plan, the offshore accounts, my father's email trail showing his complicity, and finally the recording from last night. Detective Cole listened to the entire thing without interrupting. When Victoria's voice filled the room saying, "Victoria wanted to make sure you lost everything. Money, freedom, and your child." His expression hardened. When the recording ended, he sat back and let out a low whistle. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is one of the most thorough investigations I've ever seen from a civilian. You basically did our job for us. I'm a CFO. I know how to build a case. Well, you've built a hell of a case. We have enough here to arrest all three of them, and possibly your father as well, depending on the extent of his involvement. What happens now? Now I take this to the DA. We'll get warrants, and then we'll bring them in for questioning." He looked at me seriously. "This is going to get ugly, Mrs. Mitchell. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been living in ugly for weeks. I'm ready." It happened fast after that. The DA issued warrants that afternoon. Police showed up at James's office at Heritage Design and walked him out in handcuffs in front of his entire staff. They arrested Victoria at a coffee shop where she was meeting with a potential client, completely blindsided. And they found Marcus at the penthouse, already packing to leave. His flight to Costa Rica was booked for the next day. They almost made it. Almost, but not quite. My father was arrested at his home. The charges against him were less severe, enabling fraud failure to report a crime, but enough to make him face consequences. When the news broke, it was a scandal. Local CEO arrested in elaborate fraud scheme. Woman discovers husband and cousin's plot to frame her. Dead man walking faked death leads to fraud charges. The media loved it. It had everything: betrayal money, a supposedly dead man who wasn't dead, a child in danger. I refused all interview requests. This wasn't a story I wanted to tell publicly. This was my life, my pain, my daughter's trauma, and I wanted to protect Lily from as much of it as possible. 3 months later, the case went to court. Patricia represented me in the divorce proceedings and the custody hearing. A criminal prosecutor handled the fraud charges. I sat in that courtroom for 2 weeks listening to lawyers argue over the wreckage of my life. James's lawyer tried to paint him as a victim, a man manipulated by Victoria's lies who hadn't known the full extent of the plot. Victoria's lawyer claimed she'd been influenced by her traumatic childhood and her mother's toxic jealousy. Marcus's lawyer argued he'd been trying to escape life-threatening gambling debts and had been desperate. My father's lawyer said he was an old man who'd been manipulated and hadn't understood what he was approving. But the evidence was overwhelming. The journal, the recordings, the paper trail, the confessions. The jury didn't deliberate long. James Mitchell, 7 years in prison for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud. Loss of custody rights. Victoria Chen, 10 years in prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Deportation to Taiwan upon release. Marcus Chen, 15 years in prison for identity fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and violation of his previous probation. Deportation to Taiwan upon release. Henry Mitchell, 3 years probation, a substantial fine, and mandatory community service. Not prison, but enough to destroy his reputation. I sat in that courtroom and heard the verdicts read, and I felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Just a vast emptiness. They'd destroyed so many lives, mine, James's, Lily's. And for what? Money, jealousy, some twisted sense of justice. It had all been so pointless. After the verdicts were read, I did something I hadn't planned to do. I asked to speak with my father. Patricia advised against it. "You don't owe him anything, Sarah, not even closure." "I know, but I need to say something. For myself, not for him." They arranged a meeting at the courthouse in a small conference room with a guard present. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Older. The weight of his choices had carved new lines into his face. He stood when I entered, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent child. "Sarah, thank you for agreeing to see me." I didn't sit down. "I didn't come here for you to apologize. I came here to tell you something." "What, I spent my entire life trying to earn your love, trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough. I blamed myself for the distance between us. I thought if I just tried harder, if I was just better, you'd finally see me as your daughter instead of your obligation." His face crumpled. "Sarah, let me finish." My voice was steel. "I know the truth now, about my mother, about how I'm not your biological daughter, about how you never wanted me." "That's not true. I raised you. You raised me out of duty, not love. And when I needed you most, when your actual daughter needed protection, you chose the people trying to destroy me." "I didn't know they were going to go that far. James said he was just having an affair, that you were cold, that I needed to be taught humility." I quoted his own words back to him, that I needed to understand my limitations. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I want you to know something," I said quietly. "You were right about one thing. I have learned humility. I've learned that I'm not perfect, that I can be hurt, that I can be betrayed by the people I trust most. Sarah, please. But I've also learned that I don't need your love to be whole. I don't need your approval to be worthy. I am enough just as I am. And your inability to love me says everything about you and nothing about me." Tears were streaming down his face now. "I'm so sorry. I've been so wrong about everything." "Yes, you have. And you'll have to live with that. But I won't. I'm done carrying your shame, your resentment, your inadequacy. From today forward, you're not my father. You're just a man I used to know." I turned to leave. "Sarah, wait. Please. Can you ever forgive me?" I paused at the door, looking back at him one last time. Forgiveness isn't something you get to demand. It's something you earn. And you haven't even started trying. I walked out of that room and didn't look back. The months after the trial were strange. I had to rebuild my entire life from the ground up. I quit my job at MedTech Solutions. Too many people knew about the case, and I couldn't stand the pitying looks in the hallways. I sold the house in the West Hills. Too many memories. too many ghosts. Lily and I moved to a smaller place in a different neighborhood. A fresh start. The divorce was finalized. I took back my mother's maiden name, Chen. Sarah Chen. It felt right. Lily struggled at first. She didn't understand why her father was in prison, why Aunt Victoria had done what she did, why everything had changed so suddenly. I told her the truth, age-appropriately, that sometimes adults make very bad choices, that her father had done something wrong and was facing consequences, that it wasn't her fault, and that both her parents loved her even though they wouldn't be together anymore. "But if Dad loved me, why did he do it?" she asked one night, crying in my arms. "Love isn't always enough to make people do the right thing," I said gently. "Your father loves you, but he also made choices that hurt our family. Both things can be true." It was messy. It was painful. It was real, but we got through it together. I started seeing Dr. Rachel Morrison, a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. "You've been through something most people can't even imagine," she told me in our first session. "Multiple betrayals, a conspiracy to destroy you, the revelation that your entire childhood was built on lies. That's not something you just get over. So what do? You grieve, you feel it, and then you decide who you want to be on the other side of this." Over the next year, I did exactly that. I grieved the marriage I thought I had, the family I thought I was part of, the father I'd spent my whole life trying to please. I felt the anger, the sadness, the betrayal. I let myself be broken, and then slowly I put myself back together. But this time I built something different, something stronger. 18 months after the trial, I did something I'd been thinking about for a long time. I started my own company, Phoenix Financial Consulting. We specialized in helping women going through divorces protect their assets, detect financial fraud, and rebuild their financial lives. I hired Elena as my business partner. She handled the investigative journalism side, writing about financial scams and helping expose fraud. We rented a small office in downtown Portland with a view of the river. Our first client was a woman named Jennifer, whose husband had been hiding assets in offshore accounts. She'd suspected for years, but didn't know how to prove it. "I feel so stupid," she told me in our first meeting. "I should have seen it sooner." "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "You trusted someone you loved. That's not stupidity. That's being human." I helped her trace the money document, the fraud, and build a case. 6 months later, she won her divorce settlement and full custody of her kids. She hugged me when it was over, crying. "You saved my life." "No," I said. "You saved your own life. I just helped you find the tools." Over the next 2 years, we helped 47 women. Each one had a story of betrayal, of financial abuse, of feeling lost and alone. And each one walked out stronger than when they'd walked in. Lily thrived. She was 12 now, smart and resilient, and surprisingly well-adjusted given everything she'd been through. She'd started therapy around the same time I did, and it helped her process the trauma. She visited her father in prison twice a year. I never stopped her. He was still her father, and she needed to come to her own conclusions about him. After each visit, she'd be quiet for a few days, processing. "Do you think Dad's a bad person?" she asked me once after a particularly difficult visit. "I think Dad made very bad choices," I said carefully. "But I also think people are more complicated than just good or bad. He loves you. He also hurt our family terribly. Both things are true." "Do you still love him?" "I love who I thought he was, but that person wasn't real. So I guess I love a memory, not a person." She nodded, thinking about that. "I'm glad we have each other, Mom." "Me too, baby. Me too." 3 years after the trial, something unexpected happened. I ran into someone from my past. I was at a bookstore in the Pearl District, browsing the business section, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sarah Chen." I turned around. Mark Sullivan. He'd been a classmate in business school, someone I'd been friends with before I met James. We'd lost touch when he moved to Seattle for work. "Mark," I smiled, genuinely pleased to see him. "Wow, it's been, 15 years? At least." He looked older, we all did, but his smile was the same. Warm, genuine. "I heard about what happened with your ex-husband. I'm so sorry." Most people got awkward when the scandal came up, but Mark's sympathy felt real, not performative. Thank you. It was difficult, but we got through it. We, my daughter and me. You have a daughter? That's wonderful. We ended up getting coffee that afternoon, catching up on 15 years of life. Mark had also been through a divorce. His wife had left him 3 years ago for someone she'd met at a conference. No fraud, no conspiracy, just the slow death of a marriage that had never really worked. I'm sorry, I said when he told me. Don't be. It was the right thing. We wanted different things. We'd just been too scared to admit it. We talked for 2 hours, and it was easy, comfortable, like picking up a conversation we'd paused years ago. At the end, he asked, "Would you want to do this again sometime? Get coffee, I mean." I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, I did, but because I wasn't sure I was ready. I have to be honest with you, I said. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm not even sure I'm capable of trusting someone that way anymore. That's okay. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm asking for coffee with someone I used to know and would like to know again. I smiled. In that case, yes, I'd like that. Over the next 6 months, Mark and I became friends. We'd meet for coffee every few weeks, talk about work and life and all the small things that make up a day. He met Lily eventually at her request. She was curious about Mom's friend from business school. They got along well. Mark treated her like a person, not a child, which she appreciated. He's nice, she told me after he left. Are you guys dating and we're friends? But you like him? I do like him, as a friend. She gave me a look that was far too knowing for a 12-year-old. Okay, Mom, whatever you say. I didn't know what Mark and I were or what we might become, but I knew I wasn't in a hurry to figure it out. For the first time in my life, I was content just being Sarah. Not someone's wife, not someone's daughter, not someone trying to prove her worth. Just Sarah. And that was enough. 4 years after the trial, I got a letter from Victoria. It was forwarded through Patricia, who called to warn me first. You don't have to read it, Patricia said. I can have it destroyed if you want. No, I'll read it. I'm curious what she has to say. The letter was handwritten 7 pages long. Dear Sarah, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even finish reading this letter. But I need to try to explain, not to excuse what I did, but to help you understand. I've had 4 years in prison to think about my choices. 4 years to realize that everything I thought I knew about you, about my mother, about myself, it was all wrong. My mother was bitter. She spent her entire life comparing herself to yours and feeling like she came up short. And she passed that bitterness to me like a disease. I grew up hating you for things that weren't your fault. For being loved by your mother when mine couldn't love herself. For having opportunities when we struggled. For existing in a world that seemed to favor you. But here's what I've realized, none of that was true. Your mother didn't steal anything from mine. Your life wasn't perfect. You struggled too, you just struggled differently. And the jealousy that poisoned my mother, that poisoned me. It was never about you. It was about us not knowing how to be happy with what we had. I destroyed your life because I thought it would make me feel better. I thought if I could take everything from you, I'd finally feel like I was enough. But you know what I learned. Destroying you didn't make me whole. It just made me empty. I'm writing this letter because my therapist here suggested it might help me process my guilt. I don't know if it will. I don't know if anything will. But I want you to know you didn't deserve what I did to you. You were kind to me. You helped me when I had nothing. And I repaid that kindness with cruelty. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't undo the damage. But I'm sorry. I hope you and Lily are doing well. I hope you've found peace. And I hope someday maybe you can think of me without hatred. Victoria Chadi. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Didn't write back. Didn't reach out. Not because I was angry I wasn't not anymore, but because some apologies arrived too late to matter. Victoria would have to live with what she'd done. That was her burden, not mine. I had my own life to live. 5 years after the night I'd found that message, I stood in my office at Phoenix Financial Consulting looking out at the Portland skyline. The company had grown. We now had 5 full-time employees and had helped over 100 women protect themselves from financial abuse. Elena and I were writing a book together, The Silent Reckoning, a financial controller's guide to surviving betrayal. It would be published next spring. Lily was 14 now, thriving in high school. She was on the debate team, captain of her soccer team, and talking about wanting to study law. "I want to help people like you helped people," she'd told me. "I want to fight for the ones who can't fight for themselves." My heart had nearly burst with pride. Mark and I had been dating for 2 years. We'd taken it slow, painfully slow by most people's standards. But we'd both been burned before, and we weren't in a hurry. He'd proposed 3 months ago, not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly over dinner in my kitchen. "I don't need you to complete me," he'd said. "You're already complete, but I'd like to be part of your life if you'll have me." I'd said yes. We were planning a small wedding for next fall. Just family and close friends. No big production. Lily was going to be my maid of honor. That evening after work, I came home to find Lily at the kitchen table working on college application essays, even though she was only a freshman. "You're very prepared," I teased, kissing the top of her head. "I learned from the best. You always said hope for the best, prepare for the worst." "Did I say that?" "All the time." I sat down across from her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy?" She looked up from her laptop, surprised by the question. "Yeah, Mom, I'm happy." "Why?" "I just wanted to make sure, after everything we went through." "Mom," she reached across and took my hand. "What we went through was hard, really hard, but we got through it together, and I think we're both stronger because of it." "When did you get so wise?" "I told you, I learned from the best." We sat there for a moment, mother and daughter survivors of a storm that had tried to destroy us, but we'd made it through. That night, after Lily went to bed, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and my journal. I'd started keeping a journal after the trial, Dr. Morrison's suggestion. A way to process everything that had happened. I opened to a fresh page and began to write away. 5 years ago, I discovered that the 2 people I trusted most in the world had conspired to destroy me. I thought that discovery would break me. Instead, it rebuilt me. I learned that strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about falling apart and then carefully, deliberately putting yourself back together into something new, something stronger, something truer. I learned that closure doesn't always come from confrontation or apologies. Sometimes it comes from simply deciding that someone no longer gets to occupy space in your heart. I learned that betrayal says everything about the betrayer and nothing about the betrayed. I learned that I don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. I don't need anyone's validation. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Most importantly, I learned that I am enough, just as I am. Broken, scarred, imperfect, but whole. They tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a seed. And now I'm a garden. Full of life I planted myself. On my terms. In my time. And that's the most beautiful thing of all. I closed the journal and looked out at the Portland skyline lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, James was still serving his sentence. Victoria was in a prison in Oregon waiting for her eventual deportation. Marcus had already been deported. My father was living alone, estranged from the daughter he'd never learned to love. They'd all made their choices, and they were living with the consequences. But I wasn't bitter anymore. Wasn't angry, wasn't even sad. I'd let them go. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace, and I'd found it. 6 years after the trial, I got a call from the prison. James wanted to see me. He was up for parole and he wanted to apologize before the hearing. I almost said no, but something made me say yes. Maybe curiosity, maybe a need for one final conversation. I drove to the prison on a cold November morning. James looked older. Prison had aged him in ways that went beyond the gray in his hair. There was a heaviness to him now, a weight he'd carry for the rest of his life. We sat across from each other in the visitation room, separated by a table. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either." "How's Lily?" "She's good. Applying to colleges. She wants to study law." He smiled sadly. "She gets that from you, the fighter in her. She gets it from surviving what you put us through." He flinched but didn't argue. "You're right. Sarah, I need to tell you something. I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because I want you to forgive me or because I'm trying to get parole, but because you deserve to hear it. Okay? I was weak. I was selfish. I felt inadequate next to you, and instead of working on myself, I looked for someone who made me feel important. And then I got caught up in something I didn't fully understand until it was too late. You knew enough to steal from our daughter's college fund. I did, and I'll never forgive myself for that, or for what I put you through, or for the years I've missed of Lily's life. We sat in silence. Do you want to know something? I said finally. For a long time I hated you, not just for the affair, but for making me doubt myself, for making me feel like I wasn't enough. Sarah, but then I realized you were the one who wasn't enough. Not for me, not for Lily, not even for yourself, and that's something you have to live with. I know. I hope you get parole, not for your sake, but for Lily's. She needs a father even if he's not the father she deserved, and I hope you spend the rest of your life becoming a better person. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. Good. I stood to leave. Sarah, I turned back. You're going to be happy, aren't you? You and Lily. We already are. I walked out of that prison and back into my life, and I never looked back again. 10 years after that rainy September night when everything changed, Sarah Chen stood in her office at Phoenix Financial Consulting, now a thriving firm with offices in 3 cities. Lily had just finished her first year of law school, top of her class, already talking about opening a practice focused on protecting abuse victims. Mark was in the kitchen of the home they'd built together, making dinner for the family gathering they were hosting that evening. Elena stopped by with advance copies of their second book, Rising Stories of Women Who Refuse to Stay Down. And as Sarah looked around at the life she'd built from the ashes of her old one, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because she had a partner or a successful business or a happy daughter, though she treasured all those things, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. You don't need anyone else to complete you. You just need the courage to be complete on your own. And once you have that, everything else, love, happiness, peace, becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Sarah smiled and raised her glass. To phoenixes, she said softly, and the fires that forge them. Sarah's story reminds us that betrayal doesn't define us. How we rise from it does. To every woman who's been betrayed, who's had to rebuild from nothing, who's had to find strength in the darkest moments, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are a phoenix rising from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. And your story, like Sarah's, is just beginning. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories of courage and resilience to life. Remember, they tried to bury you. They didn't know you were a seed.